Carl Jung once observed that many manipulative tactics arise not from direct confrontation, but from the shadow of our unconscious behavioral patterns. Today, we explore how 3 simple words, "do what you want," can carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken accusations when delivered with a certain cold tone. The subtle tyranny of "do what you want." An anatomy of emotional manipulation. In a modest apartment overlooking the city, Sarah stands in her kitchen, phone in hand. She's planned a rare afternoon out with old friends, something she hasn't done in months, a small act of self-care that once brought her joy. Her husband Tom sits at the table, scrolling through his phone, seemingly absorbed in the digital glow that illuminates his face, but not his intentions. She hesitates before speaking, feeling the weight of unspoken rules pressing down on her shoulders. "I'm meeting Emily and Rachel for coffee around 3, she says carefully, each word measured against invisible scales of consequence. "Is that okay?" Without looking up, Tom shrugs. "Do what you want." Those 3 words hang in the air, suspended not like permission, but like a test paper waiting to be graded. Sarah's shoulders tense, her body responding to danger before her mind fully processes it. She knows this tone intimately, has learned to read its frequencies like a seismologist detecting tremors before an earthquake. It's not agreement. It's an emotional landmine carefully planted, waiting to explode hours later in sighs, cold shoulders, and accusations of selfishness disguised as wounded innocence. She cancels her plans, the click of the send button a small death of autonomy. This scenario plays out in countless relationships, in countless homes, creating a pandemic of emotional subjugation that operates beneath the radar of obvious abuse. The phrase isn't truly offering freedom. As philosopher Seneca astutely observed, clear communication requires no interpretation, yet this phrase creates nothing but a labyrinth of confusion, a maze where every path leads to guilt. It's a door slammed shut while pretending to be left open, an invitation that carries the sting of rejection. Marcus is getting ready for a run, lacing up his shoes and feeling the simple anticipation of endorphins and clarity when his partner Alex sighs heavily. That particular sigh that carries the weight of a library of unspoken grievances. "Going out again? Just a quick run," Marcus explains, the defensive note in his voice betraying that he's already on trial. "I'll be back in 30 minutes. "Fine, do what you want." The words aren't angry, they're worse. They're detached, disappointed, simmering with unspoken expectation like a pot about to boil over. Marcus checks his watch, considers staying home instead, weighing his physical health against emotional peace, knowing he'll pay a price either way. Jung would recognize this pattern immediately. The way our shadow side manifests not in grand, dramatic gestures, but in small, poisonous manipulations. These 3 words create a psychological trap where the recipient feels simultaneously free and imprisoned, like a bird told it may fly while invisible strings tether its wings. Lisa wants to pursue a painting class, something she's dreamed of for years, a small flame of creative desire that has survived the dampening effects of daily life. When she mentions it to David, he barely looks up from his newspaper, his indifference a carefully cultivated weapon. Do what you want. But she hears what isn't said, the subtext screaming beneath the silence. "But I'll be disappointed. But you're being selfish. But you don't care about me. But your desires matter less than my comfort." She doesn't sign up for the class. Another dream deferred becomes a dream denied, and the canvas of her life remains unpainted. The Stoics understood that true freedom comes from clarity of mind and purpose, from the alignment between our actions and our values. When someone responds to our plans with this cold dismissal disguised as permission, they're not just challenging our choices, they're eroding that clarity, creating fog where there should be light. Sarah Marcus, Lisa. They're all caught in the same intricate web of emotional manipulation. Their partners don't directly object. They don't offer counter-suggestions or seek compromise. They simply toss out these words and then wait, like emotional fishermen, for guilt to take the bait. It's psychological warfare conducted in whispers, where the weapons are sighs and the casualties are dreams. This isn't just about relationship dynamics. It's about how we slowly surrender our inner freedom without even realizing it, how we become complicit in our own diminishment. Each time we adjust our desires to avoid this passive disapproval, we chip away at our sense of self until we become unrecognizable, not to others, but to ourselves. The manipulation doesn't require raised voices or overt threats. It operates through loaded pauses, simmering resentment, and those three seemingly innocent words that carry the emotional weight of volumes. It's death by 1,000 cuts, each one so small we barely notice the bleeding. What happens when we don't take the bait? Anna decides to conduct an experiment in emotional sovereignty. When her partner Jake responds to her weekend plans with the familiar, "Do what you want," she simply says, "Thank you, I will." No apology, no justification, no seeking of approval disguised as explanation. The silence that follows is profound. Jake must now either voice his actual concerns, stepping into the vulnerable territory of honest communication, or let it go. The passive-aggressive script has been broken, the familiar dance interrupted mid-step. But this requires inner strength of a particular kind, the courage to accept that someone might be genuinely upset with our choices without us needing to change them. It means distinguishing between compromise born of love and surrender born of fear. It requires the wisdom to know that not all discomfort signals wrongdoing, that sometimes growth requires friction. Every time we hear, "Do what you want," and subsequently feel we've done something wrong, even though we were given permission, the manipulation succeeds. Every time we adjust our actions out of fear rather than love, we lose a piece of ourselves. The tragedy isn't just in the moments lost, but in the person we might have become had we not learned to shrink ourselves to fit others' unspoken expectations. The path to authenticity requires recognizing these patterns, naming them, and choosing differently. It means understanding that true love doesn't speak in riddles or lay emotional traps. It means having the courage to pursue our joy even when others refuse to celebrate it, to take flight even when others would prefer we remain grounded. In the end, "Do what you want" becomes a litmus test not of our choices, but of the relationships that surround us. The question isn't whether we'll take the permission offered, but whether we'll recognize when permission shouldn't be required at all. Perhaps you've heard these words before, echoing through the chambers of your memory, resonating with a familiar discomfort you couldn't quite name. Maybe you've said them yourself, unconsciously perpetuating a pattern you absorbed like background radiation from the emotional atmosphere of your upbringing. The question that emerges, like a splinter working its way to the surface, is this: how often have you found yourself adjusting your desires, your trajectory, your very being, not from genuine consideration or loving compromise, but from a primal fear of subtle punishment, of emotional withdrawal masquerading as indifference? Jung reminds us that awareness is the first step toward change, yet this awareness often arrives not as gentle illumination, but as a jarring awakening. A sudden recognition that we've been dancing to choreography we never consciously agreed to learn. This moment of clarity can be both profoundly painful and ultimately liberating. It rips away the comfortable illusions we've maintained about our relationships, our autonomy, our very selves. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions that we've spent years avoiding. Why do I absorb someone else's unspoken resentment as if it were my own burden to carry? Why should I feel responsible for emotions that weren't clearly communicated? for wounds I didn't inflict, for disappointments I never promised to prevent. The recognition of these patterns often feels like betrayal, not just by others, but by ourselves. We discover we've been complicit in our own diminishment, that we've trained ourselves to read subtext as text, to interpret silence as speech, to anticipate needs that were never voiced while neglecting our own that were shouting to be heard. The Stoics would offer a different lens through which to view this predicament. They would remind us that our choices are our responsibility, not in the sense of blame, but in the empowering recognition that we have agency. Epictetus would counsel that while we cannot control others' reactions, we can control our responses. Marcus Aurelius would suggest that the only shame lies not in others' emotional manipulations, but in allowing those manipulations to dictate our path. We have the right, indeed, the obligation to ourselves, to make decisions aligned with our values without fearing emotional punishment disguised as permission. This is not selfishness masquerading as philosophy. It is the foundation of authentic relationship, both with ourselves and others. For how can we offer genuine love, respect, or support to another if we've surrendered our own integrity in the process? The journey from recognition to liberation requires more than mere awareness. It demands courage, the courage to sit with discomfort, to allow others to experience their emotions without rushing to fix them, to maintain our boundaries even when they're tested by those we love. It requires us to distinguish between empathy and emotional enmeshment, between caring for someone and carrying their unexpressed disappointments like stones in our pockets. This transformation often involves a period of profound loneliness, a desert crossing where old patterns must be unlearned and new ways of being cultivated in their place. During this time, we may discover that some relationships cannot survive our awakening, that they were built on the foundation of our compliance rather than our authentic selves. Yet this loss, painful as it may be, creates space for connections that honor our wholeness rather than requiring our reduction. As we navigate this territory, we begin to understand that true intimacy isn't found in the ability to read others' unspoken expectations, but in the willingness to communicate clearly, to ask for what we need, to express disappointment without punishment, to celebrate each other's autonomy rather than seeing it as a threat. We learn that love doesn't demand self-abandonment, but invites self-expansion. The most profound realization may be this: in breaking free from inherited patterns of emotional manipulation, we not only liberate ourselves, but potentially interrupt a cycle that might otherwise continue for generations. Our children, our friends, our communities benefit from our commitment to clearer, more honest ways of relating. Each time we choose authenticity over appeasement, we create ripples that extend far beyond our immediate sphere. Perhaps then, the next time you hear these words, or find them forming on your own lips, you'll pause. In that pause lies the possibility of transformation, the space where old patterns can be recognized and new choices made. In that space, we discover that freedom isn't found in others' permission, but in our own unwavering commitment to truth, to clarity, and to the profound respect that genuine love demands. Next time you hear those three words, "do what you want," delivered with that particular tone that sets your nerves on edge and tightens your chest, pause. Take a breath. Let that pause expand like a protective circle around you. In that moment of stillness, consider whether you're facing genuine freedom or standing at the edge of a carefully laid emotional trap, baited with false permission and designed to catch you in guilt. This pause is not merely a moment of hesitation, it's an act of rebellion against the automaticity of learned responses. It's in this space between stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl found human freedom, where we reclaim our power to choose who we are and how we act. Remember that clarity begins within. Before you can navigate the murky waters of others' unspoken expectations, you must first chart the territory of your own heart. Ask yourself, are you choosing based on your own values, forged in the crucible of self-reflection and aligned with your deepest truths? Or are you reacting to someone else's unspoken expectations, dancing to a tune you can barely hear but feel compelled to follow? Freedom isn't merely about making choices. It's about making them without the shadow of manipulation darkening your path, without the fog of guilt obscuring your vision, without the weight of others' disappointment preemptively shaping your decisions. True freedom requires the courage to disappoint others in service of being true to yourself, to recognize that you are not responsible for managing others' emotions, especially those they refuse to articulate. Sometimes the heaviest chains are indeed the ones we can't see, those forged not of iron but of silence, shaped by loaded pauses and words that mean the opposite of what they say. These invisible shackles bind us more effectively than any physical restraint because they operate through our own conscience, turning our empathy against us, weaponizing our desire for harmony. But awareness illuminates these chains, making them visible and therefore breakable. Each time we recognize the manipulation, each time we choose authentic action over appeasing reaction, we weaken these bonds. We begin to understand that love doesn't speak in riddles, that respect doesn't set traps, that genuine care never requires us to betray ourselves. The question that remains, echoing through the chambers of your conscience, is this: will you continue to play the guessing game, exhausting yourself in the attempt to decipher others' coded messages and navigate their emotional minefields? Or will you choose the clarity that true freedom demands? This clarity comes at a cost. It may mean facing others' disappointment, weathering their attempts to restore the old dynamic, standing firm when emotional storms threaten to erode your resolve. But the alternative, a life spent as a translator of unspoken grievances, a diplomat in a war you never declared, exacts a far greater toll on your spirit. The path to freedom begins with a simple yet revolutionary act: taking words at their face value. When someone says, "Do what you want," believe them. Act accordingly. Let them experience the consequences of their own communication choices. This isn't callousness. It's respect for their autonomy and yours. In the end, the choice is not between selfishness and selflessness, but between authentic presence and perpetual performance. Choose clarity. Choose freedom. Choose the courage to live in alignment with your truth, even when, especially when, others would prefer you remain lost in the fog of their unspoken expectations. The moment you decide to stop playing the game is the moment you begin to truly live.